In today's Farm Report, planting season is almost underway, and many producers are looking at getting fertilizer on the fields early this spring. Dan Martins with the University of Minnesota Extension Service Office talks about starter fertilizers.
I'm digging around this week in some information shared by Extension Soil Specialist Dan Kaiser at a Winter Ag Research Update with the title, Making Fertilizer Decisions in Years with Low Commodity Prices. In discussions about starter fertilizer and phosphorus, it is often asked whether there is a benefit to using a starter fertilizer when the phosphorus soil test is in the high range. There is a place in the U of M fertilizer guidelines where it says no phosphorus fertilizer is suggested if soil test for phosphorus is higher than 25 parts per million with the Bray test or 20 with the Olsen test. The Olsen test is used when the soil pH is 7.4 or higher. Sometimes we add a note to that saying that if we are planting in cooler soil conditions, we might still use 10 to 15 pounds of phosphorus in a starter band, or that a pop-up fertilizer suitable for the seed furrow could meet this need. On some farms this year, we might be in a warmer weather pattern with warmer soil by the time we get to a place in the calendar where we would consider planting corn. Where we have fields with soil phosphorus tests considerably higher than Bray at 25 or Olsen at 20, perhaps where there's a strong and steady history of manure applications, it might be that phosphorus in a starter fertilizer is not needed regardless of conditions. Some farmers have done replicated strip trials in fields to check this out on their own farms. Some planters are pretty easy to turn the starter drive on and off, or with a little effort to loosen a chain or belt tightener and drop the chain or belt off the driver. Mark those strips and then use combine monitors, weigh wagons, or even hand-pick samples in the fall to see if there is a difference. If you have an FFA, 4-H, or inquisitive science student at home, it could be an interesting project where parents and children see what they can learn together. Sulfur is quite mobile in the soil, so we don't consider a sulfur soil test to be very reliable. Sulfur recommendations are more reliable based on organic matter content and crop rotation. Kaiser said 10 to 12 pounds of sulfur broadcast is enough for corn in many cases. 4 to 6 pounds in a starter band would meet the same need. It might take a few pounds more in corn following corn compared to corn following soybeans. On sandy soils with 0 to 2% organic matter, 25 pounds of sulfur broadcast would be recommended, or about half of that at 12 pounds in a starter band. Generally, most Minnesota soils are well supplied with magnesium. The very acid soils of east central Minnesota might need magnesium. There would not be a need for magnesium if dolomitic limestone is used in those situations. There is a soil test that can be used to determine a need for magnesium. It's also good to keep magnesium in our minds as different than manganese, a different nutrient. Zinc is the only micronutrient U of M field trials have seen a reliable response to. The soil test for zinc is a very reliable indicator of zinc needs. I'm Dan Martins with U of M Extension, and I hope you're regularly planting thoughts about safety among those who are working around your farm this spring.
U.S. farmers will plant about 89.2 million acres of corn this year, which is down 2% from last year, while increasing soybean acreage by 1% to a record high of 84.6 million acres. Hog prices are going to look a little lower this year. Cindy Zimmerman with AgriPulse has more.
There are 7% more hogs and pigs on U.S. farms than there were a year ago, and prices are lower. So producers are scaling back on farrowing intentions, according to USDA livestock analyst Shale Shagam.
The number of hogs and pigs in U.S. operations on March 1st was just over 65.9 million head, which was about 7% above a year ago. Producers indicated that they were holding just under 6 million breeding animals, which was about 2% above a year earlier. In December, February, producers farrowed just over 2.8 million head, which was about 2% above a year ago. But we did see about a 7% increase in the litter rate, up to about 10.17 pigs per litter. Producers also indicated intentions to farrow 2% more sows in March, May, but actually reduced the number of farrowings by 2% in June, August of 2015. Despite the fact that we're looking at relatively cheap feed prices, producers are looking at that sharp decline in hog prices and scaling back their production plans moving forward.
Shagam says overall hog prices are expected to be about $20 per hundredweight lower this year than last year.
Current prices, if you're looking at our benchmark national lean-based price, we're looking at a price on a live equivalent of about $46 a hundredweight. We are for the year looking at prices to be about $53 to $57 for 2015 compared to almost $76 a hundredweight last year on average, which was a record. So we were looking at these rather sharp declines in prices, and we would expect to see obviously seasonal pressure to be strongest in the winter months as production tends to increase, putting more slaughter animals out into the slaughterhouses during the last quarter of 2015.
Purdue livestock economist Chris Hurt forecasts the average price to be a bit lower in 2015.
Second quarter 54, third quarter 55, last quarter of the year 50, averaging the year around $52.
Reporting for AgriPulse, I am Cindy Zimmerman.
U.S. farmers this season will likely plant 2 million fewer acres to the 21 so-called principal crops.
The question would be, obviously, where those acres are coming out of production. We have a better idea of that now.
USDA's acting chief economist Rob Johansson referring to Tuesday's prospective plantings report. Almost every Corn Belt state showing a decline in corn planting intentions, the two exceptions, Minnesota and Wisconsin. Wheat will lose about 1.4 million acres, cotton also by about that much. Most notable overall declines, the Southwest, which is facing severe water constraints, and in California.
We've got the lowest principal crop planted acres in California since 1866.
And across the country, some shifting of crops, more soybeans, and also
We are seeing, for some of the minor feed grains, an increase in acres, in particular barley and sorghum, and those prices have been very strong relative to corn. And so what we're seeing is producers are moving out of corn into sorghum and out of cotton into sorghum and barley as well.
growers say they'll boost sorghum acres 11%, barley by 10%. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Washington.